there, my name is Emma Berry, independent candidate for U.S. Representative for the 3rd Congressional District of Texas. I'm running against 20-year incumbent Sam Johnson. I can do a better job representing the people of the 3rd District than Sam Johnson has done for the past 20 years. In this video, I would like to talk about the deficit, how the Democrats address it, how the Republicans address it, and what I would do as your representative in Congress. First of all, the Republicans, when they're in office, they don't address the deficit. Their strategy is to pretend like it doesn't exist. And no finer example than the recent 8 years of the George Bush administration. They passed billions and billions of dollars of unfunded legislation. And Sam Johnson rubber-stamped every piece of legislation from George Bush that crossed his desk. That was the Republican solution when they were in office for addressing the deficit. Now that the Republicans are not in office and are out of power, they're very concerned with the deficit, and all of a sudden they're fiscal conservatives. Well, they should have been fiscal conservatives for the 8 years that George Bush was in office, but we didn't see any sign of that then, did we? No. One of the Republican solutions for dealing with the deficit is to make tax cuts, tax breaks. Well, let me tell you something. Unless you make over $250,000 a year, the Republican tax breaks are not going to do you very much good. I don't know about you, but I consider myself an ordinary citizen from Main Street. And of all the tax breaks that I've received during the Republican years in office, the largest one that I recall ever having received was $150. Now I ask you, how much of a benefit does $150 represent to any American? The Democrats, on the other hand, usually, although this administration has proven itself to be some exception to this rule, normally Democrats are not adverse to raising taxes to fund legislation. And usually that's what they will do. Rather than make cuts in any of their corporate welfare budgets, they will just increase the deficit by, raising taxes. Well, both parties also have crumbs that they throw to us. My image of the Democrats and the Republicans, the people who are supposed to represent us in Washington, D.C., I see them as seated at this large banquet table with their corporate welfare pals like Lloyd Blankfein from Goldman Sachs and others, Tim Geithner. I see them all seated around this big banquet table eating this wonderful meal that has been paid for by the taxpayers on Main Street. And here we are, at the outer perimeters of that room, and from time to time, these Democrat and Republican leaders, along with their Wall Street cronies, throw us crumbs. That's the image I have of how we're represented in Congress today, the people on Main Street. The Republican crumbs that they throw to us are tax breaks. The crumbs that the Democrats throw to us are social programs that are supposed to benefit the people on Main Street. Prime example of how their programs don't really work for Main Street is the current health care proposed by the Democrats in Congress today. Their solution is to mandate that 50 million Americans become customers of the very Wall Street crooks who are ripping us off today, the health insurance corporations. Well, that's no solution. Any health care solution without a public option is no solution for Main Street. And they know that. But their primary concern, both the Democrat leadership and the Republican leadership, is to serve Wall Street. Not Main Street, but Wall Street. Well, how could they better address the deficit? The very best way that they could address the deficit is by cutting in half the current $1.3 trillion defense budget. That is the most absurd waste of taxpayer money in our entire budget, and neither the Democrats nor the Republicans will discuss it. It's a white elephant, it's a giant white elephant in the room that no one will undertake or dare to suggest that we need to put it on a severe diet. Today, that $1.3 trillion represents more money than all the other nations on our planet combined spend for national defense. It's absurd. The only nation that even comes close to competing with the money that our taxpayers spend to support national defense is China. And we spend 9 times more money. Our $1.3 trillion budget for 2010 represents 9 times more than China spends on their national defense. Now, you can't tell me that we need to spend that much money in order to be safe as a nation. We do not. We could have that. If we cut our defense budget in half, we would still be spending 4.5 times more for our national defense than China spends. We do not need to spend $1.3 trillion for our national defense budget in order to be safe. And our Congress needs to start seriously looking today to cut that budget at least by half. And another huge waste in our budget that's part of the huge deficit is the $19 billion that Americans fork over every year to Wall Street corporate agribusinesses in farm subsidies. Yes, $19 billion a year we pay to Wall Street crooks like Archer Daniel Midland, ADM, and yes, they're crooks. They were convicted of price fixing in 1996. And since that time, over the past 14 years, American taxpayers have provided them billions of dollars forked over to crooks. Well, I'm fed up with it. I am totally fed up with corporate welfare that American taxpayers are forced to pay to Wall Street crooks. And you can bet your boots that if you elect me, your U.S. representative, I will bring this topic up again and again and again in Congress until something is done with it, because corporate welfare for crooks is wrong and it's a perversion of our democracy. Thank you.